Marry me. Two words that should have been romantic became the most terrifying proposition of Daniel Reed's life. Standing in his CEO's mansion at midnight, surrounded by champagne glasses and fading laughter, he thought Claire Whitmore was joking, but her emerald eyes held no humor, only raw desperation wrapped in designer clothing and perfect posture. Within 48 hours, this composed, untouchable woman would lose everything her family had built, and somehow, a single father with calloused hands and a second-hand suit had become her only lifeline. If you want to see how a fake marriage became the most real thing either of them ever fought for, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about Daniel Reed that most people never understood was this. He had mastered the art of becoming invisible, not in a tragic way, not in a way that suggested damage or defeat. Daniel had simply learned, through years of single parenthood and middle management anonymity, that life ran smoother when you didn't take up too much space, when you arrived exactly on time, left exactly when appropriate, and never, ever drew attention to the careful machinery of your existence, which made his presence at Claire Whitmore's birthday party something of an anomaly. "You came." Claire's voice cut through the ambient jazz and scattered conversations like a knife through silk. She materialized at his elbow with the kind of grace that suggested she'd been tracking his position since he'd walked through her front door 20 minutes earlier. Daniel turned, champagne flute barely touched in his hand, and met the gaze of the woman who controlled the third-largest logistics empire in the northeastern United States. "You invited the entire management team," he said simply. It seemed rude not to show up. Most of the management team brought spouses, dates, someone. Claire's perfectly manicured eyebrow arched with surgical precision. "You brought yourself." "My daughter has a chemistry test tomorrow. I promised I'd help her study when I got back." Daniel glanced at his watch, a practical Timex that had survived 3 years of constant wear, which should be in about 10 minutes. Something flickered across Claire's face. Amusement, maybe, or recognition of something familiar in his calculated exit strategy. "Daniel Reed," she said, and the way she spoke his name made it sound like she was reading it off a document she'd memorized. "Manager of Supply Chain Analytics, hired 4 years ago. Consistently exceeds quarterly projections, never misses a deadline, never asks for extensions, never complains." She paused, swirling the deep red wine in her glass. "Never stays at company events longer than 30 minutes. I have responsibilities." "So do I." Claire's smile was the kind that never quite reached her eyes, the practiced expression of someone who'd learned early that revealing genuine emotion was a tactical error. "And yet here I am, at my own birthday party, counting the minutes until I can politely dismiss the sycophants and social climbers who showed up because they think proximity to power might somehow transfer through champagne bubbles." Daniel studied her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time since he'd joined Whitmore Logistics. Claire Whitmore was 36, 2 years older than Daniel himself. She wore her authority like other women wore jewelry, deliberately, strategically, with full awareness of its impact. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that probably had a French name Daniel didn't know. Her dress was midnight blue and cost more than his monthly mortgage. Everything about her screamed control, precision, untouchability, but her knuckles were white where they gripped the wine glass. "Are you all right?" The question escaped before Daniel's usual filter could catch it. Claire's expression didn't change. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because you're holding that glass like it insulted your family, and you've checked your phone 4 times in the last 2 minutes." For a moment, just a heartbeat, Claire Whitmore's mask slipped. Something raw and almost frightened flashed across her features before she locked it down with the discipline of someone who'd spent a lifetime building walls. "Walk with me," she said. Not a request, not quite a command, something in between. Daniel should have declined, should have made his polite excuses, retrieved his coat, and driven back to his modest 3-bedroom house, where his daughter Emma was probably already asleep with her chemistry textbook on her chest. Should have maintained the careful distance between employee and employer that kept life predictable and safe. Instead, he nodded. Claire led him through the sprawling house, all exposed beams and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, with the confidence of someone navigating familiar territory. They passed clusters of executives nursing expensive liquor and making connections that would translate to business deals on Monday morning. Past the catering staff clearing dishes with practiced efficiency. Past the small orchestra that had been hired to provide ambiance. Out onto a deck that stretched toward the water like an expensive pier. The October air was sharp, carrying the smell of pine and approaching winter. The party noise faded to a distant murmur behind the closed glass doors. On the dark water, a few scattered lights from distant houses reflected like fallen stars. Claire stood at the railing, still gripping that wine glass, staring at something Daniel couldn't see. "My grandfather built this company in 1952, she said finally. Started with 3 trucks and a route between Boston and New York. Worked 16-hour days. Slept in the cab more nights than he slept in a bed. Built something that mattered." Daniel waited. He'd learned, through years of being the person Emma came to when she needed to work through a problem, that sometimes silence was the most valuable thing you could offer. "My father expanded it, modernized it, took us from regional to national. When he died 6 years ago, he left me something most daughters never inherit, a genuine empire. 73 distribution centers, 14,000 employees, annual revenue in the billions." Claire's voice was steady, factual, like she was reciting statistics from a quarterly report. "He also left me a board of directors who've been looking for an excuse to push me out since the day I took the CEO position." "They can't just remove you," Daniel said. "Not without cause." "No." Claire turned to face him, and in the moonlight, Daniel could see the exhaustion she'd been hiding all evening. "They need a different kind of leverage, which is where the trust comes in." She pulled out her phone, the device she'd been checking compulsively, and showed him a document. Even squinting in the dim light, Daniel could make out the legal language, the numbered clauses, the signature at the bottom that matched the one on his paychecks. "My grandfather was a complicated man," Claire said. "Traditional in some ways, progressive in others. When he structured the company trust, he included provisions designed to ensure stability, continuity, family legacy." Her laugh was bitter. "Including a clause that requires the primary beneficiary, me, to be married by age 37, to demonstrate," and I quote, "the stability and commitment to family values that built this company." Daniel's mind, trained by years of analyzing data and finding patterns, immediately calculated the implications. "Your birthday," he said slowly, "is today, October 15th, which means I have until October 17th, 48 hours, to fulfill the marriage requirement or forfeit controlling interest in the company." Claire's composure was fracturing at the edges now, her voice tight. "The board has been waiting for this. There's already a buyer circling, Marcus Chen. He runs Dynasty Freight out of Seattle, and he's been trying to acquire us for 3 years. The moment I'm out, the board will approve the sale. 14,000 people will lose their jobs in the consolidation. My grandfather's legacy becomes a footnote in someone else's profit margin." Daniel stared at her. "You're telling me your entire company, billions of dollars, thousands of employees, hinges on a marriage certificate from 1962? Welcome to the glamorous world of family business succession planning." Claire drained her wine in one long swallow. "My lawyers have been fighting this for 2 years. Every appeal denied, every legal challenge shut down. The trust is ironclad. My grandfather made sure of that." "What about—" Daniel hesitated. "I'm sure there are men who would—" "Who would what? Marry me for money? For position? For access?" Claire's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "Oh, there are plenty. I could scroll through my contacts right now and find a dozen men who would say yes before I finish the question. Men who would see this as an opportunity, a transaction, a way to leverage themselves into power they didn't earn." She turned back to the water, gripping the railing now instead of the empty glass. "I spent 6 years proving I deserved this position. 6 years making decisions that increased shareholder value and protected employee benefits. 6 years demonstrating that gender has nothing to do with leadership capability, and now I'm supposed to just pick some opportunist from my Rolodex and hand him a piece of everything I've built?" The vulnerability in her voice, raw and real, and completely at odds with the composed CEO who commanded boardrooms, made something shift in Daniel's chest. "There has to be another option," he said. Claire laughed. and it was the saddest sound Daniel had heard in years. That's the thing about impossible situations. Sometimes there just isn't. They stood in silence for a long moment. Behind them, the party continued, people celebrating a birthday while completely unaware that the woman at the center of it all was counting down to professional annihilation. Daniel thought about his life, about Emma sleeping peacefully at home, about the mortgage that was always paid on time, the budget that balanced through careful planning, the routines that kept chaos at bay. He thought about the instinct he'd developed after his wife died, the bone-deep knowledge that safety meant staying small, staying careful, never reaching for more than you could hold with both hands. And then he thought about Claire Whitmore, who had built something extraordinary and was about to watch it crumble because of words written by a man who'd been dead for 15 years. What if there was someone, Daniel heard himself say, who didn't want your money or your position? Someone who understood that this was about saving what matters, not gaining what they don't deserve. Claire turned slowly. What are you suggesting? Daniel met her gaze. I'm suggesting that maybe you've been looking at the wrong demographic. Every man you know in your social circle, your business network, they all have ambitions, agendas. They're all calculating angles before you finish your first sentence. He paused. But what if you asked someone who doesn't travel in those circles? Someone whose life is already full? Someone who has no interest in corporate power and just wants to help solve a problem? The silence that followed was so complete that Daniel could hear the small waves lapping against the dock pilings below. Are you? Claire's voice was barely audible. Are you offering to marry me? I'm saying it's an option, a practical solution to an impractical problem. Daniel kept his voice steady, even though his heart was doing something complicated and arrhythmic in his chest. It would be temporary, professional, a legal arrangement to satisfy an outdated requirement. We could dissolve it the moment you turn 37 and the window closes. Daniel. Claire looked at him like he'd just suggested jumping off the deck. You have a daughter, which is exactly why this might work. I'm not looking for romance or adventure. I'm looking for stability and predictability, same as I've looked for since Emma was born. A temporary marriage to save your company affects my life a lot less than most people's. He ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of nervousness. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm saying it's possible. Claire studied him with an intensity that made Daniel feel like she was reading every decision he'd ever made directly off his face. You don't know what you'd be walking into, she said finally. The scrutiny, the press, the board members who would love nothing more than to prove this is a sham. It wouldn't be simple. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing is. This isn't worth doing. It's survival dressed up as strategy. Sometimes that's the same thing. Claire opened her mouth, closed it, turned back to the water, and Daniel thought maybe he'd overstepped. Maybe this was the moment where his invisible existence would reassert itself and he'd make his quiet exit back to the life that made sense. Then Claire spoke, so quietly he almost missed it. Why would you do this? You barely know me. Daniel considered the question. Thought about all the real answers, about recognizing desperation because he'd worn it himself for years, about understanding what it meant to build something against impossible odds, about Emma growing up watching her father choose courage over comfort when it mattered. Because sometimes, he said, the right thing to do isn't the smart thing. It's just the thing that needs doing. Claire turned to face him fully. In the moonlight, with her defenses cracking and her perfect composure slipping, she looked simultaneously more powerful and more fragile than Daniel had ever seen her. If we did this, if I actually accepted this absolutely insane offer, there would have to be rules, boundaries, crystal clear expectations. Her CEO voice was reasserting itself, but Daniel could hear the tremor underneath. This wouldn't be a real marriage. It would be a legal arrangement, a strategic alliance, nothing more. Agreed. You would move into my house. Appearances matter. The board can't have any ammunition to claim this is fraudulent. Okay. But separate bedrooms, separate lives. We maintain professional distance in private. That works for me. And Emma. Claire's voice softened slightly. She would need to know the truth. I won't have a child caught in a lie that could hurt her. Something in Daniel's chest loosened. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't heard the rest. Claire pulled out her phone again, pulling up calendar apps and legal documents with practiced efficiency. We have 48 hours. We need to apply for a marriage license tomorrow morning when the county office opens. There's a 3-day waiting period in Massachusetts, but I have a lawyer who specializes in expedited processing. We can be married by Monday at noon. Monday, Daniel repeated, the reality of it hitting him like cold water. Unless you're having second thoughts. He should be having second thoughts. He should be running back to his car, driving home, forgetting this entire conversation ever happened. This was Claire Whitmore, his boss, a woman he'd exchanged maybe 50 words with in 4 years, someone who existed in a completely different stratosphere of money and influence. But he thought about Emma, about the lessons he tried to teach her, about standing up for what's right even when it's uncomfortable, about helping people who need help, even when the help looks nothing like you imagined. No second thoughts, Daniel said, but I need you to promise me something. What? If at any point this puts Emma at risk, if the publicity gets dangerous, if the scrutiny becomes too much for a 13-year-old to handle, we call it off immediately. I don't care about contracts or requirements or billion-dollar companies. My daughter's well-being is non-negotiable. Claire held his gaze for a long moment, and Daniel saw something shift in her expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition that beneath his quiet exterior was a line that couldn't be crossed. Deal, she said, extending her hand. Daniel took it. Her grip was firm, professional, the handshake of someone who'd closed million-dollar contracts in boardrooms across the country. So, Claire said, a slightly hysterical edge creeping into her voice, I suppose we should discuss logistics. Do you have a suit for the courthouse? I have the one I'm wearing. We'll need rings. Nothing elaborate, but the optics. Claire. Daniel squeezed her hand gently, still holding it. Breathe. We have 48 hours. We'll figure it out. She laughed then. A real laugh. Startled and genuine. I'm planning my wedding with a man I've spoken to 3 times, trying to save a company from a legal clause written before I was born, and you're telling me to breathe. Sometimes that's all you can do. Behind them, the party was winding down. Through the glass doors, Daniel could see guests collecting coats, making their goodbyes, filing toward the front of the house where valets were retrieving expensive cars. I should go, Daniel said. Emma will worry if I'm too late. Of course. Claire released his hand, stepping back into her professional persona like someone putting on armor. I'll have my assistant contact you tomorrow morning with details. We'll need to meet with lawyers, go to the county office, coordinate with Claire. She stopped mid-sentence. We'll figure it out, Daniel repeated, one step at a time. She nodded, but he could see the fear flickering at the edges of her control. This woman who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals was terrified, and she was trusting him, a man she barely knew, to help her through it. Daniel retrieved his coat from the front closet, nodding politely at the few remaining guests who noticed his departure. As he walked toward his 10-year-old Honda in the circular driveway, parked between a Tesla and a BMW, he felt the weight of what he'd just agreed to settle over him like a physical presence. In 48 hours, he would marry Claire Whitmore. The thought should have terrified him, should have sent him spiraling into panic about what this meant for Emma, for his quiet life, for the careful routines that kept everything manageable. Instead, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the electric clarity that came from making a choice that mattered. He drove home through empty streets, past closed shops and dark houses, while his mind raced through logistics and implications. How to explain this to Emma? How to maintain normalcy while his entire life shifted beneath his feet? How to navigate a world he'd spent years deliberately avoiding? The house was dark when he arrived, except for the porch light Emma always left on for him. Daniel let himself in quietly, checked to make sure his daughter was indeed asleep with her chemistry textbook, then sat down at the kitchen table with a glass of water and his phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. A text message. This is Claire. I know it's late, but when you get a chance, call me. We need to discuss the announcement. Daniel stared at the message. In the quiet of his kitchen, surrounded by Emma's school projects on the refrigerator and the calendar that tracked orthodontist appointments and parent-teacher conferences, the events of the evening felt surreal. He was going to marry his boss to save her company. It was possibly the least sensible thing he'd ever agreed to. He called her back. She answered on the first ring. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. I keep thinking this is insane, that I'm asking too much, that you're going to wake up tomorrow and realize you've lost your mind. Daniel leaned back in his chair, listening to the uncertainty in her voice. Claire Whitmore, who never showed weakness, who commanded respect through sheer force of competence, sounded lost. I'm not going to change my mind, he said quietly. I gave you my word. A long pause. Then, why? I still don't understand why. Maybe I'm tired of watching from the sidelines. Maybe I want Emma to see that her dad is capable of more than middle management and meal planning. Maybe, he paused, searching for truth. Maybe I've spent so long keeping my life small and safe that I forgot what it feels like to do something that matters. Saving a logistics company matters. Helping someone who needs help matters. The rest is just details. He could hear Claire breathing on the other end of the line, processing his words. The announcement will hit the press Monday afternoon, she said finally, her voice stronger now. My PR team will frame it as a whirlwind romance, a private relationship that recently became serious. They'll need photos, a brief statement, maybe a short interview. Whatever you need. Daniel, a pause. This is going to change your life. You understand that, right? The privacy you've built, the quiet existence, it's going to disappear the moment we file that marriage license. He thought about that, really considered it. The attention, the scrutiny, the loss of anonymity. Then we make sure it's worth it, he said. Another pause. Then, so quietly, he almost missed it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We haven't even gotten through the paperwork. Claire laughed, that same startled, genuine sound from earlier. I have a lawyer who specializes in expedited marriage licenses. He's expecting us at 8 tomorrow morning. Can you make it? Daniel glanced at the calendar. Saturday. Emma had soccer practice at 10. I'll be there at 8, but I need to be back by 9:30 to get Emma to practice. Done. I'll text you the address. A pause. Are you sure you want to do this with Emma knowing the truth? We could tell her it's real, avoid the complications. No! Daniel's voice was firm. She's 13. She's smart. She'll figure it out anyway, and then she'll never trust me again. We tell her the truth, we let her ask questions, we give her space to process it. Okay, Claire sounded relieved, actually. You're a good father, Daniel. I'm trying to be. No, you are. A rustling sound, like she was moving around her house. I should let you get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be intense? That's one word for it. Claire. Yeah? We've got this. Whatever happens, we'll handle it. The silence that followed felt different than before. Less uncertain. Almost like the beginning of trust. Good night, Daniel. Good night. He ended the call and sat in his quiet kitchen for a long time, phone dark in his hand. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked. Outside, the October wind rattled the windows. Normal sounds, familiar sounds. The last night of his old life. Daniel finished his water, checked the locks, turned off the lights. As he climbed the stairs toward his bedroom, he paused outside Emma's door. Through the crack, he could see his daughter curled up in her bed, breathing peacefully, her blonde hair spread across the pillow like spun gold. Everything he did, every choice he made, was for her. To give her stability, security, a life free from the chaos he'd endured after his wife died. And now he was about to introduce a variable so unpredictable it made his analyst brain want to scream. But he was also about to show her something important, that sometimes the right choice looked nothing like the safe choice. That sometimes you stepped up, spoke up, showed up, even when every logical bone in your body screamed for you to stay quiet and still. Daniel eased Emma's door closed and headed to his own room. He had exactly 7 hours before he needed to be at a lawyer's office to begin the process of marrying a woman he barely knew. 7 hours to sleep, if sleep would come. It didn't. But as Daniel lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling of his modest bedroom in his modest house, he didn't feel the panic he'd expected. Instead, he felt something that had been missing from his carefully controlled life for a very long time: purpose. Tomorrow, everything changed. He was ready, The morning arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Daniel woke at 6, having drifted in and out of restless sleep for most of the night. The house was still dark, silent except for the familiar creaks and sighs of settling wood. He showered, dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt, and was making coffee when he heard Emma's footsteps on the stairs. "You're up early for a Saturday," she said, appearing in the kitchen doorway with her hair in a messy ponytail and her favorite oversized sweatshirt drowning her thin frame. Daniel turned from the coffee maker, and the sight of her, so much like her mother with those sharp, observant eyes, made his resolve solidify. Whatever he was about to walk into, it had to be done right. No lies, no half-truths. "Em, sit down. We need to talk." Her expression shifted immediately from sleepy to alert. In the 5 years since her mother died, Emma had developed a sixth sense for serious conversations. "Did someone die?" she asked, sliding into a chair at the kitchen table. "No, nothing like that." Daniel poured himself coffee, then sat across from her. "But something happened last night at the party. Something important." Emma waited, her fingers drumming lightly on the table, a nervous habit she'd inherited from him. "You know Claire Whitmore, my boss." "The Ice Queen CEO? Sure." "She's not—" Daniel stopped himself. "She's in trouble. Legal trouble. There's a clause in her family's company trust that requires her to be married by her 37th birthday, or she loses control of the company she built." Emma's eyes widened. "That's insane." "It is, but it's also legally binding. She has until Monday." "Okay, so she'll marry some rich guy and problem solved, right?" Emma's voice was casual, but Daniel could see her mind working, connecting dots he hadn't laid out yet. "She could, but every man she knows wants something from her: power, money, position. She needed someone who wouldn't use this situation as leverage." The drumming fingers stopped. "Dad," Emma's voice went very quiet. "What did you do?" Daniel met her eyes. "I offered to help. It would be temporary, just a legal arrangement to satisfy the trust requirements. A year, maybe less. But it would mean changes, big changes." Emma stared at him for a long moment, her expression cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been anger. "You're going to marry her?" "Yes." "Your boss?" "Yes." "A woman you don't even know?" "I know her well enough to know she's a good person in an impossible situation." Emma stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She paced to the window, stared out at their small backyard where frost was just beginning to melt in the early morning sun. "When?" she asked finally. "We're meeting with lawyers this morning. The ceremony would be Monday." "Monday?" Emma's laugh was sharp, brittle. "So in 2 days, you'll be married to a billionaire CEO, and what? We move into her mansion? I switch schools? Our entire life just changes?" "We'd move to her house, yes, but you wouldn't have to change schools. We'd make sure you could maintain your routines, your friends, your normal life as much as possible." "As much as possible," Emma repeated. She turned to face him, and Daniel saw tears gathering in her eyes. "Nothing about this is normal, Dad. Nothing about marrying someone you don't love is normal." The word hung in the air between them. Love. The thing Daniel had carefully avoided discussing, the element missing from this entire arrangement. "You're right," he said quietly. "This isn't normal. It's not romantic or traditional or anything a marriage should be. But Em, it's the right thing to do. This woman, she's worked her entire life to prove she deserves what she built. And some outdated rule written by a dead man is about to destroy it all. If I can help, if I can use my position to do something that actually matters, what about what I need?" Emma's voice cracked. "What about me having a stable home? What about not having our lives turned upside down by reporters and photographers and people who want to know everything about us?" Daniel stood cross to his daughter and gently took her shoulders. "That's why I'm telling you the truth. That's why Claire insisted you know everything, because your well-being is the most important thing in this entire situation. The moment this becomes too much, the moment it puts you at risk, we stop. End of discussion." Emma searched his face, and Daniel let her look. Let her see the uncertainty and the determination and the fear he'd been carrying since last night. "Does she know about Mom?" Emma asked softly. "Not yet. But she will. And she's okay with this. With you doing this for her? She tried to talk me out of it, multiple times. Emma pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. I need to think about this. Take all the time you need. But Em, I need to meet with the lawyers in an hour. I need to know you're going to be okay. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if this gets bad, if people start treating me different or saying things or making my life hell, you'll fix it. You won't just tell me to be strong or deal with it. You'll actually fix it. Daniel felt his throat tighten. I promise. Emma nodded slowly. Then I guess you should go marry a billionaire. The law office was in downtown Boston, a sleek building of glass and steel that screamed expensive legal expertise. Daniel arrived at 7:55, parking his Honda next to Claire's midnight blue Mercedes in the underground garage. She was waiting in the lobby, dressed in dark jeans and a cream sweater that probably cost more than Daniel's entire wardrobe. Her hair was down today, falling past her shoulders in dark waves. Without the armor of a business suit, she looked younger, more vulnerable. You came, she said, and Daniel heard the relief in her voice. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might wake up and realize this was insane. I did realize that. Around 3 this morning, decided to do it anyway. A ghost of a smile crossed Claire's face. How did Emma take it? Better than I expected, worse than I hoped. Daniel paused. She needs to know this is temporary, that we're not replacing her mother or pretending to be something we're not. Of course. Claire glanced toward the elevator. Ready to meet the most expensive lawyer in Massachusetts? Can't wait. The attorney's name was Harrison Webb, and he looked like Central Casting's version of a high-powered lawyer, silver hair, sharp suit, eyes that missed nothing. His office occupied the entire top floor, with windows overlooking the harbor. Ms. Whitmore, he greeted Claire with the familiarity of someone who'd worked with her for years. Then his gaze shifted to Daniel. And this must be the solution to our impossible problem. Daniel shook his hand. Daniel Reed. Harrison Webb, please, sit. He gestured to leather chairs positioned around a conference table that could have seated 12. I've prepared the preliminary documents based on Ms. Whitmore's instructions, but before we proceed, I need to ensure both parties understand the implications of what you're doing. We understand, Claire said. Humor me. Harrison pulled up a document on the large screen mounted to the wall. Massachusetts requires a 3-day waiting period between license application and ceremony. However, given the time constraints, I've filed for an emergency waiver citing medical necessity. Medical necessity? Daniel frowned. It's the fastest route through the bureaucracy. The judge who reviews these requests is, let's say, sympathetic to unusual circumstances. Harrison's expression remained professionally neutral. Assuming approval, which I expect by this afternoon, you'll be able to marry as early as tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, Daniel repeated, even faster than he'd anticipated. Harrison continued. The ceremony itself can be performed by any authorized officiant. I've arranged for Judge Patricia Hernandez to conduct a private civil ceremony at the courthouse Monday at 10 a.m. Press won't have access. Minimal witnesses required. Claire leaned forward. What about the announcement? I've coordinated with your PR team. They'll release a statement Monday at noon, immediately following the ceremony. The narrative is simple. You and Mr. Reed have been in a private relationship for several months. Recent events prompted you to formalize your commitment. No elaborate details, no invitation for speculation. They'll speculate anyway, Claire said. Of course they will. Which is why we need your story to be consistent, believable, and impossible to disprove. Harrison turned to Daniel. Mr. Reed, you'll need to prepare for scrutiny. Your financial history, your employment record, your personal life, everything will be examined by people looking for evidence this is fraudulent. My life is pretty boring, not much to find. Boring is perfect, but boring doesn't prevent invasive questions. Harrison slid a folder across the table. This is a preliminary agreement outlining the terms of your arrangement. Duration, financial considerations, custody arrangements. Custody, Daniel's voice sharpened. Of your daughter, should anything happen to you during the marriage. Standard precautionary language. Claire spoke quietly. I had Harrison add a clause. If something happens to you, Emma's custody defaults to your designated guardian, your sister in Portland, according to your employee file. I have no claim, no rights, no involvement in her life, unless you explicitly grant it. Daniel looked at her, surprised by the consideration. Thank you. I meant what I said last night. Emma's well-being is non-negotiable. Harrison cleared his throat. There's also the matter of a prenuptial agreement. Ms. Whitmore's assets are considerable. In the event of dissolution, I don't want her money, Daniel interrupted. Nevertheless, we need documentation stating exactly that. Otherwise, a divorce court might interpret things differently. Harrison pulled up another document. This prenup specifies that Mr. Reed waives all claims to Mrs. Whitmore's assets, current and future. In exchange, Ms. Whitmore agrees to cover all legal fees, housing expenses during the marriage, and provide a settlement of $200,000 upon dissolution as compensation for disruption to your life. Daniel started to protest, but Claire cut him off. It's fair, Daniel. You're sacrificing your privacy and peace for this. That has value. I'm doing this to help, not to profit. And the settlement ensures you and Emma have security when this ends. Please, let me do this one thing right. Daniel studied her face, saw the plea beneath the professional veneer, and nodded. Okay. They spent the next hour reviewing documents, signing forms, answering Harrison's methodical questions about their fabricated relationship, how they met, when they started dating, why they kept it private. We need details, Harrison explained. Small moments that feel real. The press will interview your coworkers, your friends, anyone who might contradict the timeline. Claire and Daniel looked at each other across the table. We met at the company holiday party last year, Claire said slowly, building the fiction in real time. We talked about logistics optimization and discovered we both had the same analytical approach to problems. Riveting first conversation, Daniel added with a slight smile. We started having coffee occasionally, just professional discussions at first. Then it became more. Claire's voice was steady, but Daniel noticed her hands were clasped tight in her lap. We kept it quiet because of the power dynamic, the optics of a CEO dating an employee. Recent weeks made us realize life's too short to hide, Daniel continued, picking up the thread. So we decided to make it official. Harrison nodded approvingly. Good. Simple, believable, hard to disprove. Stick to that story. Don't elaborate unless necessary. The more details you add, the more chances for inconsistency. By the time they finished, it was 9:15. Daniel checked his watch. I need to get Emma to soccer practice. Claire stood. Of course. Harrison, send the final documents to my office. We'll review them tonight. In the elevator down to the parking garage, silence stretched between them. Daniel watched the floor numbers descend and tried to process everything that had just happened. The contracts, the story, the reality of what they were about to do. Daniel, Claire's voice was quiet. If you want to back out, now's the time. Once we file that license application this afternoon, things start moving fast. Daniel turned to look at her, really look at her. This woman who ran a billion-dollar company, who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals, who was currently terrified beneath her composed exterior. I'm not backing out, he said. Are you? No, but I keep thinking about Emma, about what this might do to her life. Emma's tougher than she looks, and she knows this is temporary. She knows we're doing this for the right reasons. The elevator doors opened. They walked together toward their cars. Tomorrow morning, Claire said, stopping next to her Mercedes, after the waiver comes through. We should spend time together, get our story straight, make sure we can actually be convincing as a couple. You mean practice being married? I mean practice not looking like strangers who just signed a business contract. Daniel considered this. My house, 2:00. Emma will be home from practice. She should be part of this if we're all going to live it. Claire looked surprised. You want her there? She's part of this family, fake marriage or not. If you're going to be in our lives, she needs to know who you are. Something shifted in Claire's expression. Softness, maybe. Or gratitude. 2:00, she agreed. Daniel drove home through Saturday morning traffic, his mind racing through logistics and implications. Emma's soccer practice, grocery shopping, the normal rhythms of weekend life continuing while his entire existence prepared to shift beneath his feet. Emma was quiet during the drive to the soccer field. She stared out the window, her cleats in her lap, processing everything Daniel had told her that morning. "Will she be nice?" Emma asked suddenly as Daniel pulled into the parking lot. "Who?" "Claire. Will she be nice to us? Or is she going to be one of those people who's only nice when other people are watching?" Daniel turned off the engine. "I think she's scared and trying to protect something important to her, which means she'll probably be intense and focused and not great at small talk. But I don't think she's mean, Em. I think she's just under a lot of pressure." Emma unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't get out. Mom would think this was crazy. The mention of Sarah, so rare these days, hit Daniel in the chest. Yeah, she would. But she'd also probably say you were being noble and self-sacrificing and doing the Daniel Reed thing where you help people even when it's inconvenient. The Daniel Reed thing? Emma smiled faintly. That's what she used to call it. When you'd stay late to help a coworker or volunteer for the terrible projects no one wanted. She said you had a broken no button. I can say no. Not when someone needs help. Emma opened the door, grabbed her cleats. I'm going to be okay, Dad. I mean, I'm freaked out, and this is weird, and I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm okay. We can still back out. No, you made a promise. You're going to keep it. She paused, one foot out of the car. But if she's mean to you, I'm allowed to be mean back. Fair enough. Emma jogged toward the field where her teammates were warming up. Daniel watched her go, marveling at the resilience of teenagers. 5 hours ago, she'd learned her father was marrying a stranger. Now she was heading to soccer practice like it was any other Saturday. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Waiver approved. We can marry as early as tomorrow. Tomorrow? Sunday, the day after today. The reality of it settled over Daniel like a physical weight. He texted back. Okay, see you at 2. The house felt different when Daniel got home, like it knew things were about to change. He moved through familiar spaces, the kitchen where he'd made 1,000 meals, the living room where Emma did homework, the small office where he managed bills and budgets, and tried to imagine Claire Whitmore existing in these spaces. It didn't compute. He cleaned, which was his default response to anxiety, vacuumed the living room, organized the kitchen, put away the scattered mail and Emma's school projects, made the house presentable for a woman who probably had staff to handle these tasks. At 1:30, his phone rang. Unknown number. Daniel Reed, he answered. Mr. Reed, this is Jennifer Park from the Boston Herald. I understand congratulations are in order? Daniel's stomach dropped. I'm sorry? Your upcoming marriage to Claire Whitmore. We received an anonymous tip this morning. I was hoping you'd comment on the timeline, the relationship, how you two... Daniel ended the call. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. He let it go to voicemail. By the time Claire arrived at 2, Daniel had 17 missed calls and counting. She pulled up in the Mercedes, and Daniel watched from the window as she sat in the car for a long moment before getting out. She was dressed more casually than he'd ever seen her. Dark jeans, a simple navy sweater, minimal makeup. Trying, he realized, to fit into his neighborhood, into his life. He opened the door before she could knock. They already know, he said. Claire's face went pale. How? Someone tipped off the Herald. I've had 17 calls in the last 30 minutes. Damn it! Claire pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. It was supposed to stay quiet until Monday. Someone on the board must have leaked it. She looked up at Daniel. I'm sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Nothing we can do about it now. I can have Harrison issue a statement, confirm the relationship but request privacy. It won't stop the calls, but it might slow them down. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, having heard Claire's voice. She descended slowly, studying their unexpected guest with open curiosity. Hi, Emma said. You're Claire. I am. You must be Emma. Claire's professional composure faltered slightly. Your father has told me a lot about you. He hasn't told me much about you. Emma, Daniel warned. What? It's true. Emma crossed her arms. You're marrying my dad to save your company. That's basically all I know. Claire met Emma's challenging gaze without flinching. You're right, and you deserve to know more. Can we sit down? They moved to the living room, Daniel and Emma on the worn couch, Claire in the armchair that had been Sarah's favorite reading spot. The juxtaposition felt wrong, but Claire seemed unaware of the significance. I'm not going to pretend this is normal, Claire said, addressing Emma directly. Your father is doing me an enormous favor because I'm in a situation I can't fix on my own. It's temporary. It's not romantic. And it's not meant to replace or diminish the family you already have. Emma studied her. So what is it meant to do? Keep 14,000 people employed. Preserve a company my grandfather built from nothing. Prevent a corporate takeover that would destroy decades of work. Claire's voice was steady. Those are the practical reasons. But honestly, it's also about proving that an outdated rule written by a dead man doesn't get to decide my future. My dad thinks he's helping you, but what happens to us? What do you mean? Emma leaned forward. I mean, when reporters start calling me, when kids at school find out, when our normal life becomes this public thing we can't control. What happens then? Claire was quiet for a moment. Then we adapt. We set boundaries. We protect your privacy as much as possible, and if it becomes too much, we stop. Just like that? Just like that. Your well-being matters more than my company. Your father made that very clear. Emma glanced at Daniel, something softening in her expression, then back to Claire. Okay, but I have rules. Okay? You don't pretend to be my mom. You don't try to parent me. You don't get to make decisions about my life. Agreed. And you have to be nice to my dad. Like actually nice. Not fake nice for cameras. Claire's lips twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. I can do that. Then I guess we're doing this. Emma stood. I have homework. You guys should probably practice looking like you actually like each other. She disappeared upstairs, leaving Daniel and Claire alone in the living room. She's protective, Claire said. She's been through a lot. Her mom died when she was 8. It's been just us for 5 years. I'm sorry. I didn't know. No reason you would. Daniel stood, moved to the window. Outside, a car was parked across the street. Unfamiliar. Someone sitting in the driver's seat with what looked like a camera. We've got company. Claire joined him at the window. Photographers. They'll be camped out by Monday. Great. Daniel. Claire turned to face him. We should talk about logistics. Moving. Living arrangements. What this actually looks like day to day. You have a big house. We'll stay out of your way. That's not what I meant. If we're going to convince anyone this is real, we need to actually know each other. Not just the story Harrison helped us build, but real things. Details. The kind of stuff married couples know about each other. Daniel realized she was right. Okay. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with coffee. How do you take it? Black. Sometimes with sugar if I'm really tired. Favorite food? Anything I don't have to cook, but if I'm making it, probably pasta. It's quick and Emma actually eats it. Morning person or night person? Morning. I'm useless after 10 p.m. Claire was taking mental notes, cataloging information like she was preparing for a business negotiation. Hobbies? Reading, running sometimes, helping Emma with whatever project she's obsessed with that week. Daniel paused. Your turn. How do you take your coffee? Espresso, double shot. I have a machine in my office. Favorite food? I don't really eat for pleasure. Food is fuel. That's depressing. That's efficiency. But Claire smiled slightly. Although I have a weakness for good chocolate. Dark, at least 70% cacao. Morning or night person? Night. I do my best thinking between midnight and 2 a.m. That's going to be a problem, Daniel said. I'm asleep by 10:30. We'll figure it out. They spent the next hour like that, trading information, favorite movies, music preferences, pet peeves, the mundane details of daily life that married couples accumulated over time, but that Daniel and Claire needed to compress into a single afternoon. Emma came back downstairs around 4, found them still talking, and rolled her eyes. You guys are the weirdest couple ever. We're not a couple, Daniel corrected automatically. You're getting married tomorrow. That's the definition of a couple. Tomorrow? Claire looked at Daniel. You told her? I tell her everything. Emma grabbed an apple from the kitchen. So where am I sleeping in the mansion? Do I get my own wing? You get your own room, Claire said. There are 6 bedrooms. Pick whichever one you want. 6 bedrooms for 3 people. That's excessive. That's what I inherited. Emma studied Claire with renewed interest. Do you ever feel weird about it? Having all that money and space when other people don't? Every day, Claire said quietly, which is part of why I fight so hard to keep the company. We employ 14,000 people. We offer benefits most companies don't. We invest in communities. It's not perfect, but it's something. Emma nodded slowly, some of her skepticism fading. Okay, that's actually kind of cool. Daniel's phone rang again. He glanced at the screen, another unknown number, and silenced it. You should probably answer eventually, Claire said. Harrison can help you prepare a statement. Or I could just not talk to reporters. That'll make them more determined. Let them be determined. Claire stood, recognizing that Daniel had reached his limit for the day. I should go. Let you have your evening, but tomorrow, the ceremony is at 10. Can you be at the courthouse by 9:30? We'll be there. We? Claire looked at Emma. She should be there, Daniel said. If we're doing this, she should see it happen. Claire nodded. Okay, 9:30. Courthouse steps. Try not to answer any questions from reporters on the way in. After she left, Emma and Daniel made dinner together. Spaghetti, simple and familiar. They ate at the kitchen table, not talking about tomorrow, not talking about the life-changing event that was less than 18 hours away. Finally, as Daniel was washing dishes, Emma spoke. She's not what I expected. No? She's more real. I thought she'd be all business and cold and robot-like, but she actually seems like she cares. About the company, about people. Emma paused. About doing this right. She does care. That's why we're helping her. Are you scared? Daniel turned from the sink. Terrified. But you're doing it anyway. Yeah. That's pretty brave, Dad. Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug, grateful for her resilience and her understanding and her ability to find courage when he needed it most. That night, Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling, knowing that tomorrow he would wake up, get dressed, drive to a courthouse, and marry a woman he'd had exactly 3 substantive conversations with. It was insane. It was necessary. It was happening. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Claire. Thank you for everything. I know this isn't what you signed up for when you took a job in supply chain analytics. Daniel typed back. Neither was watching a good person lose everything because of a bad rule. See you tomorrow. A pause. Then, see you tomorrow. Daniel set the phone down and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, everything changed. Again. The courthouse steps were already crowded with reporters when Daniel, Emma, and Claire arrived at 9:20 the next morning. Daniel had worn his best suit, the same one from the party, because it was the only one he owned that still fit properly. Emma was in a simple blue dress she'd chosen herself, her hair pulled back, her face set in the determined expression she wore when facing something that scared her. Claire emerged from a black town car in an elegant cream dress that managed to look both wedding-appropriate and businesslike, her dark hair styled in soft waves that caught the morning light. The cameras started flashing immediately. Ms. Whitmore, is it true you're getting married today? Daniel, how long have you been seeing Miss Whitmore? Is this marriage legitimate or a business arrangement? Claire's hand found Daniel's as they navigated the steps, and the touch, their first deliberate physical contact, sent a jolt through him. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly despite her composed expression. Don't answer anything, she murmured. Just keep moving. Emma stayed close to Daniel's other side, her jaw tight. A photographer got too close, his camera nearly hitting her shoulder, and Daniel shifted his body to block the intrusion. Back off, he said quietly, but with enough edge that the photographer hesitated. They made it through the doors into the relative quiet of the courthouse lobby. Claire's hand slipped from Daniel's, leaving his palm feeling strangely empty. I'm sorry, she said, her composure cracking slightly. I thought we'd have more time before they found out. It's fine, Daniel lied. Emma was staring at the marble floors, the high ceilings, the security checkpoint ahead. This is really happening. We can still turn around, Daniel said. Walk right back out those doors. Emma looked at him, then at Claire. Would you lose everything? Claire met the teenager's gaze. Yes. Then we're not turning around. Emma straightened her shoulders. Let's go get you guys married. Judge Patricia Hernandez's chambers were on the 3rd floor, accessible through a maze of corridors that smelled like old wood and legal documents. Harrison Webb was already there, along with 2 witnesses Daniel didn't recognize. Courthouse employees, he guessed, pulled in to make the ceremony legally binding. The judge herself was a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and silver hair cut in a no-nonsense bob. She looked at Daniel and Claire with the expression of someone who'd seen every variation of human behavior and wasn't easily fooled. Ms. Whitmore, she greeted Claire. Harrison tells me you're in quite a predicament. That's one way to put it, Your Honor. Judge Hernandez's gaze shifted to Daniel. And you're the solution. I'm trying to help, Daniel said simply. The judge studied them both for a long moment. Then her eyes landed on Emma. And who's this? My daughter, Emma. She knows this is temporary, Emma said before anyone could speak for her. She knows it's about saving a company, not about love. And she's okay with it because her dad is doing the right thing. The judge's expression softened slightly. A mature perspective for someone so young. I'm 13, old enough to understand complicated situations. Apparently so. Judge Hernandez gestured toward her desk. Well then, shall we proceed? The ceremony itself was shockingly brief. No music, no flowers, no gathered family offering tearful blessings. Just legal language and required confirmations and the exchange of simple gold bands that Harrison had procured from somewhere. Do you, Claire Elizabeth Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Claire's voice didn't waver. I do. Do you, Daniel James Reed, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? Daniel looked at Claire, really looked at her. This woman who was trusting him with her entire future, who had bared her desperation to a near stranger because she had no other options, who stood here in a courthouse chamber instead of a church because tradition had been replaced by necessity. I do. Then, by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Judge Hernandez paused. You may kiss if you'd like, though given the circumstances, a handshake might be more appropriate. Claire and Daniel exchanged a glance. Then Claire stepped forward, rose on her toes, and pressed a brief, chaste kiss to his cheek. Thank you, she whispered, so quietly only he could hear. And just like that, Daniel Reed became a married man for the 2nd time in his life. The paperwork took another 20 minutes. Signatures and witness confirmations and official stamps that made everything legally binding. Emma stood near the window, watching the reporters still gathered outside, her expression unreadable. They're not going to leave, are they? She asked. Not today, Harrison said. The statement goes out in 30 minutes. By noon, this will be national news. Great. Emma's voice was flat. Claire crossed to her and Daniel watched as his new wife crouched down to Emma's eye level. I know this is overwhelming. I know it's not what you wanted for your Sunday morning, but I promise you, we're going to protect your privacy as much as humanly possible. No interviews, no photos of you without permission. Your life stays as normal as we can make it. Normal ended the second my dad agreed to this, Emma said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. Then we'll find a new normal, together. Emma studied Claire for a moment, then nodded. Okay? They left through a back entrance, avoiding the main crowd of reporters. Claire's town car was waiting, along with a second vehicle that Harrison had arranged for Daniel and Emma. I need to go to the office, Claire said, checking her phone. The PR team wants me there when the statement drops. Can you two get home okay? We'll be fine, Daniel assured her. Claire hesitated, standing there in her wedding dress on a courthouse loading dock. Your things. You'll need to pack. We should coordinate the move for later this week, give you time to… Claire. Daniel touched her arm gently. Breathe. We'll figure out the logistics, one thing at a time. She nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Right. One thing at a time. She glanced at Emma. Thank you for being here. It meant something. You're welcome, I guess, Emma said. Then Claire was sliding into the town car, and Daniel and Emma were being ushered into the second vehicle, and the morning that had started with terror and ended with marriage was transitioning into whatever came next. The drive home was quiet. Emma stared out the window while Daniel checked his phone and found 43 new messages, most from numbers he didn't recognize. "Dad," Emma said finally, "are you okay?" "Honestly, I have no idea." "That's fair." They pulled up to their house to find 3 news vans parked on the street. Reporters clustered on the sidewalk, cameras ready, microphones extended like weapons. "You have got to be kidding me," Daniel muttered. "Mr. Reed, can you comment on your relationship with Claire Whitmore?" "Daniel, how did you two meet? Is it true this marriage is to satisfy a legal requirement?" Daniel put his arm around Emma, shielding her as they pushed through to their front door. He unlocked it, got them both inside, and immediately closed the blinds on every window facing the street. "This is insane," Emma said, peering through a crack in the living room curtains. "There are like 20 people out there." Daniel's phone rang. "Claire." "Are you home?" she asked without preamble. "Yeah, with a welcoming committee of about 20 reporters." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll have security send someone to disperse them." "Claire, you can't control the press." "No, but I can make their lives difficult if they're harassing you." A pause. "The statement just went out. It's already trending on Twitter." Daniel closed his eyes. "What are people saying?" "Everything you'd expect. Some think it's romantic. Some think it's suspicious. Some think I'm using you. Some think you're using me. The internet has opinions." "Shocking." "Daniel," Claire's voice softened. "Are you really okay?" "I'm married to my boss, and there are news vans outside my house. I'm doing great." A slight laugh. "Fair point." Background noise filtered through the phone, voices, ringing phones, the chaos of her office, dealing with the announcement. "I have to go. The board wants a statement. But call me if you need anything at all." "I will." After she hung up, Daniel found Emma in the kitchen making sandwiches with methodical precision, her stress response, inherited from him. "We should probably talk about the move," Daniel said. Emma didn't look up from the peanut butter she was spreading. "When?" Claire suggested later this week. "Give us time to pack, say goodbye to the house." "This has been our home since Mom died." "I know." Emma finally met his eyes. "Do we have to sell it?" "No, we can keep it, rent it out, or just leave it empty for when this is all over and we move back." "When this is over," Emma repeated. "You keep saying that like you're sure it'll end." "It will. A year, maybe less. As soon as Claire turns 37 and the trust requirement is satisfied." Emma picked up her sandwich, took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. "What if it doesn't, though? What if things get complicated?" "Then we deal with complications." "That's not a plan, Dad." "It's the only plan I have right now." They spent the rest of Sunday in a strange limbo, packing boxes in between fielding calls from concerned friends and ignoring reporters who occasionally rang the doorbell. By evening, the news vans had thinned to just 2, and Daniel's phone had finally stopped its constant buzzing. He was sitting in the living room, surrounded by half-filled boxes, when his sister called. "You got married," Jennifer said without preamble, "to a billionaire without telling me. It happened fast." "Fast? Daniel, you called me 3 weeks ago complaining about your broken dishwasher. Now you're married to Claire Whitmore? What the hell is going on?" Daniel explained. The trust clause, the impossible timeline, the decision to help. Jennifer listened in silence until he finished. "Let me get this straight," she said finally. "You agreed to marry a woman you barely know, upend your entire life, and expose Emma to media scrutiny because you felt bad for your boss? When you say it like that, it sounds stupid." "That's because it is stupid." "Daniel, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking that sometimes the right thing to do isn't the safe thing. I was thinking that Emma needs to see her father stand up for people who need help. I was thinking, you were thinking like the guy who always puts everyone else first and forgets to protect himself." Jennifer's voice softened. "I know you want to be noble. I know you want to teach Emma good values, but this is extreme even for you. It's done now. The question is whether you're going to support me or spend the next year telling me I made a mistake." A long pause. "Does Emma seem okay with it?" She's handling it better than I expected. And Claire, is she treating you right? Daniel thought about Claire's cold hand in his on the courthouse steps, her whispered thank you, her promise to protect Emma's privacy. Yeah, she is. Then I guess I'm supporting you, but Daniel, if this goes sideways, if she hurts you or Emma, you call me immediately. Got it? Got it? After they hung up, Daniel found Emma asleep on the couch, her phone still in her hand. He gently removed it, covered her with a blanket, and allowed himself a moment to just look at his daughter. Whatever happened in the coming months, whatever complications arose, her well-being would always be his first priority. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. How are you holding up? Daniel typed back, surrounded by boxes and second-guessing everything. You? Same, except replace boxes with legal documents and board members who think I've lost my mind. Have you? A pause. Then, probably. But it's too late to back out now. Daniel smiled despite himself. Get some sleep, Claire. Tomorrow's going to be intense. You too. And Daniel? Thank you. Again. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. I know you do. He set the phone down and looked around his living room. This house, with its worn furniture and scattered memories, had been his sanctuary for 5 years, a place where he and Emma had built a life from the wreckage of loss. And now they were leaving it, stepping into something unknown and potentially dangerous. But they were doing it together, and they were doing it for the right reasons. That had to count for something. The next morning arrived with the sharp clarity of autumn in New England. Daniel woke early, made coffee, and checked the news to find his face plastered across every major outlet. Single father weds billionaire CEO in surprise ceremony. Claire Whitmore's unexpected marriage raises questions. Logistics empress marries employee in private courthouse wedding. Emma appeared in the kitchen, her hair tangled from sleep, and peered over his shoulder at the laptop screen. You're famous, she said. I'm infamous. There's a difference. Think anyone at school has seen this? Everyone at school has seen this. Emma groaned. Great. That's going to be a fun conversation. Daniel's phone rang. Claire again. Morning, she said, and he could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Did you sleep? A little. You? Not really. The board meeting is at 9. They want to address the marriage publicly, make sure everything is above board. Do you need me there? No. Harrison thinks it's better if you're not involved in company politics yet. But Daniel, they're going to question everything. The timeline, our relationship, whether this is legitimate. It is legitimate. We have the marriage certificate to prove it. Legally, yes. But they're looking for evidence this is a sham. Any inconsistency, any hesitation, and they'll use it to challenge the trust requirements. Daniel heard the fear beneath her words. You've got this, Claire. You've been defending your position for 6 years. This is just another negotiation. This is different. This is personal. Which is exactly why you'll win. Because you're fighting for something that matters. A pause. How do you do that? Do what? Make impossible things sound manageable. Practice. I've had a lot of impossible things to manage. Claire exhaled slowly. I should go, but Daniel, if you get any calls from reporters, don't answer. Let Harrison handle media inquiries. Already doing that. Good. I'll call you after the meeting. The hours crawled by. Daniel continued packing while Emma did homework and pretended not to be constantly checking her phone for messages from friends. By noon, Claire still hadn't called, and Daniel's anxiety was ratcheting higher with each passing minute. Finally, at 12:40, his phone buzzed. It's done, Claire said, and her voice was shaking. The board accepted the marriage as legitimate. The trust requirements are satisfied. I keep my position. Relief flooded through Daniel. That's good. That's great. Marcus Chen's lawyer was there. He tried to argue that the marriage was fraudulent, that we should have to prove romantic intent. But Harrison shut him down. The trust only requires marriage, not love. Legal language matters. So it's over. The immediate crisis? Yes. But Daniel, Chen isn't going to give up. He's been trying to acquire this company for 3 years. He'll look for other angles, other ways to undermine my position. Let him look. You won your round. We won our round. Claire's voice steadied. I couldn't have done this without you. You would have found another way. No, I wouldn't have. Every other option involved compromise or surrender. You gave me a third path. A pause. Thank you. They talked for a few more minutes about logistics, the move, the schedule, how to manage the transition. Then Claire had to go, pulled back into the endless demands of running a billion-dollar company. Emma looked up from her math homework. She won. She won. Good. Emma returned to her equations. She seems like she deserves it. The rest of the week passed in a blur of packing and planning. Claire's assistant coordinated the move with military precision, professional movers, careful inventory, a schedule that minimized disruption to Emma's school routine. By Friday afternoon, Daniel and Emma's belongings were being loaded into trucks while they stood in their empty living room, saying goodbye to the house that had sheltered them through grief and recovery. It's weird seeing it like this, Emma said quietly. All empty. We can come back any time. It's still ours. It won't be the same. No, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we're ready for different. Emma leaned against him, and Daniel wrapped his arm around her shoulders. 5 years ago, in this same room, he'd held his daughter while she cried for her mother. Now they were leaving, stepping into a future neither of them had planned, but both had chosen to face together. Claire's house, their house now, at least temporarily, was exactly as imposing as Daniel remembered. The sprawling lakeside property, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sense of space and money that felt alien after years in their modest 3-bedroom. Claire met them at the door, still dressed in business attire from another long day at the office. She looked exhausted, but relieved. "Welcome home," she said, and the words sounded strange coming from her, like she was still getting used to the concept of sharing her space. Emma stood in the massive foyer, craning her neck to look at the high ceilings. "This is insane." It's excessive," Claire agreed. "My grandfather believed in making statements." "Well, he definitely made one." Claire showed them around. The kitchen with its professional-grade appliances, the living room with furniture that looked too expensive to sit on, the library filled with books Claire admitted she'd never had time to read. Then upstairs, where 6 bedrooms opened off a central hallway. "Pick whichever one you want," Claire told Emma. Emma explored each option with the seriousness of someone making a major life decision. She finally chose a corner room with windows overlooking the lake and a window seat perfect for reading. "This one," she declared. "Good choice. It has the best light in the mornings." Claire turned to Daniel. "Your room is here." She led him to another bedroom, large, elegantly furnished, with its own bathroom and a view of the woods behind the property. "And yours?" Daniel asked. Claire pointed to double doors at the end of the hall. "Master suite, completely separate. You'll have your privacy." It felt important to establish that distance, to maintain the boundaries they'd agreed on. But standing in this beautiful house, with Emma claiming her space and Claire trying to make them feel welcome, Daniel felt the strangeness of their arrangement settling over him like an uncomfortable jacket. They were married but separate, living together but apart, a family in legal terms only. "I've stocked the kitchen," Claire was saying, "but I'm not much of a cook. There's a service I use. They deliver meals 3 times a week. If that doesn't work for you, we can figure out something else." "I usually cook," Daniel said. "For Emma and me. I can make enough for 3. Claire looked surprised. "You don't have to do that. I'm not going to make my daughter eat delivery food every night. I might as well make extra." Something shifted in Claire's expression. "Okay, thank you." That first dinner was awkward. The 3 of them sitting at Claire's enormous dining table, passing dishes of pasta Daniel had made in a kitchen too fancy for his simple cooking. Emma kept glancing between her father and Claire like she was watching a nature documentary about incompatible species forced to share territory. "So," Emma said finally, "what do we do now?" "What do you mean?" Claire asked. "I mean, what's normal? Do we all eat together every night? Do we pretend to be a regular family? Do we just ignore each other and live separate lives in the same house?" Claire set down her fork. "I don't know. I've never done this before." "None of us have," Daniel said. "So maybe we figure it out as we go. Emma needs routine, dinner together, homework time, normal bedtime. Beyond that, we adapt." "I can do routine," Claire said. I'm very good at routine. Except you work until midnight most nights, Emma pointed out. Usually, yes. So you'll miss most dinners. Claire hesitated. I suppose I will. That's okay, Daniel said. We're not trying to force a family dynamic that doesn't exist. We're just three people sharing space and trying to make it work. Emma nodded slowly. Okay, but weekends. If you're home, you should eat with us. Otherwise, it's too weird. Claire looked at Emma, then at Daniel. Weekends, she agreed. I can do weekends. It was a start, a small negotiation in the larger arrangement they'd all committed to. And as they finished dinner and Emma disappeared upstairs to set up her room, Daniel helped Claire clear the table in a silence that felt less uncomfortable than it might have. She's very direct, Claire said as she loaded the dishwasher. She learned early that honesty is faster than dancing around issues. I like it. It's refreshing. Claire paused, holding a plate. Daniel, I know this is strange. I know we're navigating something that has no blueprint, but I want you to feel like this is your home, not just a place you're staying temporarily. It's your house, Claire. For now, it's our house. Legally, factually, whatever. And I don't want you tiptoeing around like a guest. Daniel met her eyes. Okay, then you should know that I'm going to keep cooking, and Emma's going to be loud sometimes, and we're probably going to disrupt your perfectly organized life more than you're expecting. Claire smiled slightly. Good. This place could use some disruption. Later that night, after Emma was asleep and Claire had retreated to her office for a few more hours of work, Daniel stood in his new bedroom and tried to process the past week of his life. 7 days ago, he'd been a single father with a predictable existence and no complications beyond managing a teenager and meeting deadlines. Now he was married, living in a mansion, and trying to navigate a relationship that was simultaneously intimate and distant, real and fake, simple and impossibly complex. His phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. How's the mansion? Daniel typed back. Ridiculous. Emma has a window seat. I have a bathroom bigger than our old living room. And Claire? Trying. We're all trying. That's something. Daniel set the phone down and looked out the window at the dark lake beyond. Somewhere in this house, Claire was probably still working, still fighting to maintain control of the empire she'd spent years building. Emma was sleeping peacefully in a room nicer than anything she'd ever had, and Daniel was standing in borrowed luxury, wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake or the best decision of his life. Time would tell. But for tonight, they'd all survived their first day as a manufactured family. That counted as a win. The following weeks brought a rhythm Daniel hadn't expected. He and Emma maintained their routine, school, homework, dinner, the comfortable patterns of single-parent life, while Claire orbited around them like a distant planet, present but separate. She kept her word about weekends, though. Saturday and Sunday dinners became non-negotiable, and Daniel watched as Claire slowly relaxed into the role of housemate, if not quite family member. But trouble was coming. Daniel felt it in the way Claire's phone rang at odd hours, in the tension that gathered around her shoulders when she checked her email, in the clipped conversations she had behind closed doors. 3 weeks after the wedding, it arrived. Daniel was making breakfast when Claire came downstairs at 6 in the morning, already dressed for work, but with an expression that made him set down the spatula. What happened? He asked. Claire held up her phone, her hand trembling slightly. Boston Herald. Front page. They're running a story about you. Daniel took the phone and read the headline. Claire Whitmore's convenient husband. Financial irregularities raise questions about rushed marriage. The article was savage. It detailed supposed discrepancies in Daniel's financial records, suggested he'd been in debt before the marriage, implied he'd targeted Claire for her money. There were quotes from unnamed sources claiming Daniel had been seen meeting with Marcus Chen's representatives. Insinuations that the entire marriage was a scheme orchestrated by Chen to destabilize Claire's position from within. None of it was true, but it was written with just enough ambiguity to avoid outright slander while destroying Daniel's credibility. This is Chen, Claire said, her voice tight with fury. He couldn't challenge the marriage legally, so he's trying to destroy you personally, make the board question my judgment for marrying you. Daniel set the phone down carefully. My finances are clean. I've never met with Chen or his people. This is fabricated. I know that. Harrison knows that. But perception matters. The board meets next week, and if they think I married someone questionable, someone who might be manipulating me, then they use it as ammunition to remove you anyway. Daniel finished her thought. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas, her phone in her hand. Dad, kids at school are texting me about some article. What's going on? Daniel's stomach dropped. Let me see. Emma handed over her phone, and Daniel saw the group chat messages filling her screen. Screenshots of the article. Speculation about whether her father was a con artist. Cruel jokes about gold diggers and opportunists. Emma, he started. It's fine, she said, but her voice was too controlled, too careful. I'll just ignore it. You shouldn't have to ignore it, Claire said sharply. She pulled out her own phone, dialing with swift, angry movements. Harrison, we have a problem. She walked out of the kitchen, already deep in crisis management mode, leaving Daniel and Emma alone. Is it true? Emma asked quietly. Any of it? No, someone's trying to make me look bad to hurt Claire. Then we prove it's not true. It's not that simple, Em. They didn't make specific claims I can disprove. They just raised questions, created doubt. Emma crossed her arms. So what do we do? Daniel looked at his daughter, 13 years old and already learning that sometimes people lied, sometimes the truth didn't matter, sometimes the world was fundamentally unfair. We find the truth behind the lies, he said, and we expose it. Claire returned, her expression grim. Harrison's filing for emergency injunctions against further publication pending a defamation suit, but the damage is done. The board has already called a special meeting for tomorrow to address concerns about my judgment. Tomorrow? Daniel frowned. That's fast. Chen's been planning this. The article was just the opening move. Claire ran her hand through her hair, destroying its perfect styling. There's more. 3 of our largest shipments disappeared overnight, just vanished from the tracking system. And 2 of our distribution centers failed surprise safety inspections this morning, violations we've never had before. Daniel's analytical mind immediately caught the pattern. That's not coincidence, that's coordination. No, it's sabotage. Claire sat heavily in one of the kitchen chairs. Chen's not just attacking me personally. He's attacking the company's operations, creating chaos, making it look like I'm losing control. Emma had been listening silently. Can't you just tell the board someone's sabotaging you? Without proof, it sounds like paranoia, like I'm making excuses for actual operational failures. Claire looked at Daniel. I'm sorry. I brought you into this, and now you're being crucified in the press. Your daughter's being harassed at school. This isn't what I promised you. No one's crucifying anyone, Daniel said firmly. Someone's lying. We prove they're lying, that's all. How? The article doesn't make specific claims, it just raises questions. Daniel sat across from Claire, his mind already working through the problem like it was a logistics puzzle. The shipments that disappeared, what do they have in common? Claire pulled up data on her phone. 3 different routes, different carriers, different destinations. Nothing obvious connects them except they all vanished within a 12-hour window. And the distribution centers that failed inspection? Portland and Atlanta both got citations for equipment violations. Fire extinguishers out of date, emergency exits blocked, safety protocols not followed. Equipment violations, Daniel repeated. Emma, go get ready for school. This might take a while. After Emma left, Daniel leaned forward. Claire, I need access to the full shipping records, not summaries, raw data, tracking numbers, timestamps, carrier information, everything. Why? Because disappearing shipments don't just vanish. Someone rerouted them, changed the documentation, created false trails. And if I can find the pattern, I can find who did it. Claire studied him. You think you can track this? I analyze supply chain data for a living. It's literally what you hired me to do. Daniel paused. Well, before I became your husband instead of your employee. A ghost of a smile crossed Claire's face. You're still both, technically. I never took you off the payroll. Then put me to work. Give me access to the systems and let me do what I'm good at. Claire hesitated. If you find something that implicates employees, people we trust, then we'll deal with it. But Claire, right now we're fighting shadows. We need concrete evidence. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll have IT give you full access. But Daniel, be careful. If Chen's people realize you're investigating, you could become a target too. I'm already a target. Might as well make it worthwhile. Daniel spent the rest of the day buried in data while Claire went to the office to manage the crisis. He worked from Claire's home office, spreadsheets and tracking logs spread across 3 monitors, looking for the inconsistencies that would reveal the truth. Emma came home from school at 3, dropped her backpack with more force than necessary, and flopped onto the couch. Bad day? Daniel asked without looking away from his screens. People are idiots. What happened? Jessica Morrison told everyone you're probably going to steal all of Claire's money and leave her broke. Tyler Chen, who I'm pretty sure is related to the guy trying to destroy Claire's company, said you're obviously a con artist. And Mrs. Peterson asked me in front of the whole class if everything was okay at home. Daniel finally turned from the computers. I'm sorry, Em. It's not your fault. It's the fault of whoever wrote that stupid article. Emma kicked off her shoes. Are you finding anything? Maybe. The shipments that disappeared all used the same secondary carrier for the last leg of delivery, a company called Rapid Transit Solutions. So, Rapid Transit Solutions was incorporated 6 months ago. No previous history, no client base except us, and their corporate registration lists an address that doesn't exist. Emma sat up. Ghost company? Exactly. Someone created a fake carrier, got it approved in our system, and used it to reroute shipments. Daniel pulled up more data. And look at this. The equipment violations at the distribution centers? The citations were issued by an inspector named Robert Walsh, who, according to state records, retired 8 months ago. So fake inspector too. Either fake or someone using his credentials. Daniel leaned back in his chair. This isn't just sabotage. This is sophisticated fraud. Multiple points of attack, all coordinated, all designed to look like legitimate failures. Can you prove it? I'm building the case, but I need more. I need to connect it directly to Chen. His phone rang. Claire. The board meeting is moved up to tonight, she said without preamble. 7 o'clock, emergency session to address operational failures and concerns about leadership stability. Tonight, they're not even giving you time to respond. That's the point. Chen's board allies are pushing hard. They want me rattled, unprepared, defensive. Claire's voice was strained. Daniel, I don't know if I can survive this. Even if we eventually prove the sabotage, the damage might already be done. Then we don't wait for eventually. We prove it tonight. How? Daniel looked at the data on his screens, the patterns emerging from chaos. I'm not sure yet, but I'm close. Give me until 6. If I can't find the smoking gun by then, you go to the meeting with what we have. And if you do find it, then I'm coming with you. After Claire hung up, Daniel dove back into the data with renewed intensity. Emma brought him coffee and sandwiches without being asked, setting them beside his keyboard like an offering to the gods of corporate investigation. At 5:15, he found it. Buried in the payment records for Rapid Transit Solutions was a wire transfer authorization, and the authorization code matched a pattern Daniel recognized from other transactions he'd reviewed in his 4 years at Whitmore Logistics. It was the pattern used by senior management for expedited vendor payments. Daniel cross-referenced the authorization against the company directory. Then he sat back, his heart pounding. The authorization had come from David Price, Claire's VP of Operations, a man who'd been with the company for 12 years, who Claire trusted implicitly. But the timestamp on the authorization was telling. It had been entered at 2:30 in the morning from an IP address that traced back to a location in Seattle, Chen's headquarters. Daniel picked up his phone. Claire, I found it. Price is working with Chen. He's been authorizing the fake transactions, setting up the shell companies, coordinating the sabotage. Silence on the other end. Then Claire's voice, barely audible. David? Are you sure? The evidence is clear. IP addresses, authorization codes, timestamps. He's been accessing the system remotely from Seattle, probably getting paid by Chen to create chaos from inside. David's worked for my family since before I took over. He was at my father's funeral. Claire's voice broke. How could he do this? Money, power, whatever Chen offered him. Daniel softened his tone. I'm sorry, Claire. Another pause. Can you document everything? Put together a presentation that proves it? Already doing it. I'll have it ready in 30 minutes. Then meet me at headquarters, 6:30. We're going into that board meeting with ammunition. Daniel worked frantically, compiling evidence into a clear, irrefutable presentation. Screenshots of IP addresses, wire transfer records, the ghost companies traced back to their source, the fake inspector whose credentials had been compromised. Everything laid out in the kind of analytical clarity that left no room for doubt. Emma helped him print documents, organize files, prepare backup copies of everything. You're good at this, she said as she collated pages. At what? Finding the truth, being the detective. It's kind of cool. Daniel smiled despite the tension. Thanks, kiddo. Are you nervous? Terrified. Good. That means it matters. At 6:15, Daniel kissed Emma goodbye, made sure she had the number for Claire's assistant in case of emergency, and drove toward downtown Boston with a thumb drive full of evidence that would either save Claire's company or prove insufficient against the forces arrayed against them. The Whitmore Logistics headquarters was a steel and glass tower in the financial district. Daniel had worked there for 4 years, but always in the middle floors, never approaching the executive level where decisions that affected thousands of lives were made. Tonight, he was going straight to the top. Claire met him in the lobby, flanked by Harrison Webb, and 2 people Daniel didn't recognize, probably lawyers or advisors pulled in for the crisis. You have everything? Claire asked. Daniel held up the thumb drive. Everything we need. Then let's end this. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent and tense. Daniel watched the numbers climb and tried to ignore the fear that he was wrong, that his analysis had missed something, that he was about to humiliate himself and destroy Claire's last chance at survival. The boardroom was exactly as imposing as Daniel had imagined. Massive table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 12 board members were already seated, along with David Price at the far end, looking confident and calm. And at the head of the table, in the visitor's chair reserved for non-board members, sat Marcus Chen himself. He was younger than Daniel expected, maybe 45, with sharp features and an expression that suggested he'd already won and was just waiting for everyone else to realize it. Ms. Whitmore, the board chairman said, we weren't expecting you to bring guests. This is my husband, Daniel Reed, and my attorney, Harrison Webb. Given that tonight's meeting appears to be about my personal judgment and company operations, I thought their presence was appropriate. Very well. The chairman glanced at his notes. As you know, we're here to address serious concerns about operational failures, leadership stability, and recent allegations regarding your marriage. Allegations that are completely false, Claire said firmly, planted by someone trying to destabilize this company from within. That's quite an accusation, Chen said smoothly. Perhaps if you focused less on conspiracy theories and more on actual management, your shipments wouldn't keep disappearing. Claire's jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. The shipments disappeared because someone inside this company has been sabotaging our operations. Someone working with you, Mr. Chen. Outrageous. Chen looked at the board members with practiced concern. This is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking that worries us all. Ms. Whitmore is seeing enemies everywhere instead of addressing real problems. Then let me address the real problems, Daniel said quietly. Every eye in the room turned to him. Chen's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise or annoyance. Mr. Reed, the chairman said, with all due respect, you're not a board member or company executive. Your input isn't... Actually, I'm manager of supply chain analytics, have been for 4 years, which makes me uniquely qualified to explain exactly how your operations have been compromised. Daniel stepped forward, connected the thumb drive to the boardroom's presentation system, and pulled up his first slide. 3 shipments disappeared in the last week. All of them were rerouted through a carrier called Rapid Transit Solutions. He displayed the company registration. This carrier was incorporated 6 months ago with a fake address and no legitimate business history. It was approved into our vendor system by VP of Operations David Price. Price sat forward. I approved hundreds of vendors. I can't remember every... You approved this one at 2:30 in the morning from an IP address in Seattle. Daniel pulled up the access logs. The same IP address registered to Dynasty Freight headquarters, Mr. Chen's company. The room went silent. Furthermore, Daniel continued, the distribution center violations were issued by an inspector using stolen credentials. The inspector in question retired 8 months ago, but someone's been using his access codes to issue fake citations. Another slide. The pattern of violations matches exactly with facilities that were about to exceed their quarterly targets. Convenient timing to shut them down. This is circumstantial, Chen said, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. Is it? Daniel looked directly at him. Because I also found wire transfers from a Dynasty Freight subsidiary to David Price's personal account. 15 payments over 6 months, totaling $300,000. He displayed the banking records. Price went pale. David? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. Price stood abruptly. This is fabricated. He's making this up to protect her. The banking records are public information once you know where to look, Harrison said calmly. We've already submitted them to the SEC and the FBI. They're quite interested in learning more about corporate espionage and fraud. The board chairman was staring at Price with something between shock and fury. David, is this true? Price looked at Chen, who had gone very still and quiet, then back at the board. I want immunity before I say anything else. That's not how this works, Harrison said. You either cooperate now and maybe reduce your sentence, or you stay silent and face the full weight of federal charges. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Price slumped back into his chair. Chen approached me 8 months ago, said he'd pay me to create operational chaos, make Claire look incompetent, feed him inside information. Price's voice was hollow. I thought it was just business, corporate gamesmanship. I didn't realize he was trying to destroy everything. You sold out 14,000 employees for $300,000, Claire said, and the betrayal in her voice was devastating. People who trusted you, families who depended on this company. Price couldn't meet her eyes. Chen stood smoothly. I think this meeting is concluded. My lawyers will be in touch. Sit down, Mr. Chen, the board chairman said, his voice hard as steel. You're not going anywhere until we've discussed the legal ramifications of corporate espionage, attempted fraud, and conspiracy to commit sabotage. You have no authority over me. No, but the FBI does, and I suspect they'll be very interested in your acquisition tactics. The chairman looked at Harrison. I assume you've already contacted the authorities? They're waiting downstairs, Harrison confirmed. Chen's composure finally cracked. For just a moment, Daniel saw the calculation behind his eyes, the assessment of options, the realization that his carefully constructed plan had collapsed around him. Then 2 federal agents entered the boardroom, and any remaining doubt about the severity of the situation evaporated. Mr. Chen, Mr. Price, you'll need to come with us, one of the agents said. As they were escorted out, Price looked back at Claire. I'm sorry, he said. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Claire said nothing, just watched as 12 years of trust and loyalty walked out the door in handcuffs. After they left, the boardroom remained silent for a long moment. Then the chairman turned to Daniel. Mr. Reed, that was impressive investigative work. I just followed the data. You saved this company. You realize that? Daniel glanced at Claire, who was staring at the table, her shoulders rigid with suppressed emotion. I just helped my wife. The company part was a bonus. The chairman smiled slightly. Well, I think we can safely say this meeting is adjourned. Miss Whitmore, you have our full support, and our apologies for doubting you. The board members filed out, offering Claire words of support and reassurance. Harrison stayed behind, making notes on his phone about next steps and legal proceedings. Finally, it was just Daniel and Claire alone in the massive boardroom. I need a minute, Claire said quietly. Daniel nodded and stepped out into the hallway, giving her space to process everything that had happened. Through the glass walls, he could see her standing at the window, looking out at the city lights, her reflection wavering like she might shatter into 1,000 pieces. Harrison joined him in the hallway. That was well done, very well done. Will the charges stick? Against Price, absolutely. He confessed in front of witnesses. Against Chen? It'll be harder, but the wire transfers and IP addresses build a strong case for conspiracy. Harrison paused. You just made some very powerful enemies, Mr. Reed. They started it. I just finished it. True, but be careful. Chen has resources and connections. This won't end just because he's facing charges. Daniel understood. Tonight was a victory, but the war wasn't over. Chen would fight back, would use every legal maneuver and political connection to avoid consequences. And in the meantime, he'd still be targeting Claire, still looking for ways to acquire what he wanted. But tonight, they'd won. They'd proven the sabotage, protected the company, exposed the betrayal. Tonight, that was enough. Claire emerged from the boardroom 20 minutes later, her composure restored but her eyes red-rimmed. Let's go home, she said. They drove back in Claire's Mercedes, the city lights streaking past the windows. Daniel called Emma to let her know everything was okay, that they'd won, that she could stop worrying. I wasn't worried, Emma lied. But that's cool. Tell Claire I said good job not getting fired. When they arrived at the house, Claire went straight to her office while Daniel found Emma curled up on the couch with her chemistry textbook. How was it? Emma asked. Intense, scary, successful. Did you see the bad guys get arrested? I did. That's pretty cool, Dad. Emma paused. You know, when you first said you were marrying Claire to help her, I thought it was kind of stupid. But seeing you actually help her, seeing you figure out who was lying and prove it, that was actually really cool. Daniel sat beside his daughter. Thanks, kiddo. Is she okay? Claire, I mean. She's processing. Someone she trusted for 12 years betrayed her. That's not easy. Emma was quiet for a moment. You should check on her. She probably wants to be alone. Dad, she just found out her VP tried to destroy her company. She probably shouldn't be alone. Daniel looked at his 13-year-old daughter and marveled at her wisdom. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't always notice. He found Claire in her office, staring at her computer screen without really seeing it. Daniel knocked gently on the doorframe. Can I come in? Claire looked up, and her carefully maintained composure crumbled. David's worked for this company since before my father died. He was at the funeral. He told me I'd do great things. Her voice broke. How could I not see it? Daniel entered the office, closed the door behind him. Because you trusted him, because trust is supposed to mean something. It made me weak, vulnerable. It made you human. Daniel sat in the chair across from her desk. Claire, you can't run a company by suspecting everyone. You can't build something good by assuming the worst of people. But if I'd been more careful, more suspicious, then you'd be someone else, someone harder, someone who couldn't inspire the kind of loyalty that makes 14,000 people show up every day and do their best work. Daniel leaned forward. David betrayed you. That's on him, not you. Claire wiped her eyes roughly. I keep playing it back, every conversation, every decision, looking for signs I missed. You'll drive yourself crazy that way. Maybe, but it's better than sitting here feeling like an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're someone who got betrayed by a person she had every reason to trust. That's different. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then, thank you for finding the truth, for standing up in that boardroom, she gestured vaguely, for all of it. That's what partners do. We're not really partners. We're people playing roles. Daniel considered that. Maybe we started that way, but tonight felt pretty real to me. Claire met his eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or the first fragile threads of actual connection. Get some sleep, Daniel said, standing. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. Yeah, probably. Claire stood too. Daniel, I meant what I said before, about this being temporary, about not asking more of you than you agreed to. But I want you to know that having you here, having someone I can actually trust, it means something. I know. Daniel said simply. Get some sleep, Claire. He left her office and climbed the stairs to find Emma already in bed, her light still on, her chemistry book abandoned on the floor. She okay? Emma called out as Daniel passed her door. She will be. Good. She seems less ice queenie now, more like actual person. Daniel smiled. Yeah, she does. In his own room, Daniel lay in the dark and replayed the evening. The boardroom confrontation. Chen's arrest. Price's confession. The moment when everything they'd built could have collapsed, but didn't. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Saw the news, you're all over Twitter. Something about exposing corporate fraud? What the hell is happening in your life? Daniel typed back. Long story, tell you later. But we're okay, you better, because this is insane even for you. He set the phone down and closed his eyes. Outside his window, the lake was dark and still. Inside the house, Claire was probably still working despite his advice to sleep. And somewhere in Boston, federal agents were processing the arrests of men who'd tried to destroy what Claire had built. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Chen wouldn't go quietly. The media would have questions. The company would need steady leadership through the aftermath of betrayal. But tonight, they'd won. And for now, that was enough. The weeks following Chen's arrest brought a strange kind of peace to the house by the lake. The media frenzy eventually subsided, replaced by business journals praising Claire's leadership during crisis and legal analysts dissecting the fraud case that would probably stretch on for months. Life settled into something that resembled normal. Though normal had been redefined so many times, Daniel barely remembered what the word used to mean. Claire still worked late most nights, but she'd started joining them for breakfast on weekdays. Emma had stopped referring to her as the Ice Queen and had upgraded to calling her Claire, which felt like progress. And Daniel had found himself cooking dinner for 3 instead of 2, setting an extra place at the table without thinking about it, listening for the sound of Claire's car in the driveway like it mattered whether she made it home safely. It was early December when things shifted again. Daniel was in the kitchen preparing dinner, something simple with chicken and vegetables, when Claire came home earlier than usual. She stood in the doorway watching him work, and when Daniel turned around, he found her staring with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're home early," he said. "Board meeting got canceled. Chen's lawyers are still filing motions, but it's mostly noise at this point." Claire set down her briefcase. "Can we talk?" Something in her tone made Daniel turn off the stove. "Sure. What's going on?" Claire sat at the kitchen table, and Daniel noticed she was turning her wedding ring absently, a habit she'd developed over the past month. "I turned 37 in 2 weeks," she said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. "Right. The trust requirement. Once you pass that birthday, the clause becomes irrelevant. I'll maintain controlling interest regardless of marital status." Claire looked up at him. "Which means we fulfilled our agreement. The marriage served its purpose." Daniel sat down across from her. "So you want to start divorce proceedings?" "I want to talk about what happens next." Claire's fingers stilled on the ring. "When we started this, we both agreed it was temporary. A year at most. Legal arrangement, nothing more." "I remember. But Daniel, nothing about the last 2 months has felt temporary or purely legal." Claire's voice was steady, but Daniel could hear the uncertainty beneath it. "You exposed corporate fraud to save my company. You stood in front of a boardroom full of powerful people and defended me. You've made this house feel like a home instead of just a place I sleep between meetings." Daniel didn't know what to say. He'd felt it too. The shift from strangers playing roles to something more complex. The way Claire had started asking about Emma's day. The Saturday mornings when all 3 of them made pancakes together. The night 2 weeks ago when Claire had fallen asleep on the couch during a movie and Daniel had covered her with a blanket instead of waking her. Small moments that added up to something neither of them had planned for. "Emma asked me yesterday if you were going to leave after your birthday," Claire continued. "I told her I didn't know, and she said," Claire's voice caught slightly, "she said she hoped you wouldn't because she likes having you here." "Emma said that?" "She did. And I realized I have no idea what you want, Daniel. We've never talked about it. We just kept moving forward, dealing with each crisis as it came, never stopping to ask if this arrangement was still working for you." Daniel looked at this woman who'd been his wife for 2 months, his boss for 4 years, and a stranger until October, who'd trusted him with her vulnerability and her company and her carefully guarded heart, who sat in his kitchen looking simultaneously powerful and terrified, waiting for him to decide their future. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Claire met his eyes. "I want to take this ring off my finger and put it back on for the right reasons. Not because of a trust clause or a legal requirement, Not because we're trapped by circumstances or playing roles for the board. She pulled the ring off, held it in her palm. I want to choose this. Choose you. Choose us. If that's something you'd want too. Daniel stared at the ring in her hand, the simple gold band they'd exchanged in a courthouse 2 months ago. A symbol that had started as pretense and somehow became real. Claire, I'm not wealthy or powerful. I can't give you the kind of life you're used to. I'm a single dad who works in logistics and makes dinner every night and goes to bed at 10:30. I know exactly who you are. And Emma comes first, always, no matter what. I wouldn't want it any other way. I'm also terrible at corporate events, and I hate small talk, and I have no idea how to be a CEO's actual husband instead of just the guy who helped solve a fraud case. Claire smiled slightly. So we figure it out together, same way we figured out everything else. Daniel reached across the table and took the ring from her palm. It was warm from her skin, solid and real and terrifying in its implications. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it right. No more separate lives under the same roof. No more pretending in public and distance in private. We try to build something real. That's what I want, Claire said, to try. Even if we fail, even if it's complicated and messy and nothing like a normal marriage. I don't think we've ever been capable of normal. Probably not. Daniel looked at the ring in his hand, thought about the life he'd built with Emma, the routines and safety nets that had kept them afloat after Sarah died. Thought about Claire, who'd somehow become woven into those routines without him noticing, who made Emma laugh at breakfast and asked Daniel's opinion on business decisions, and had learned to make his coffee exactly the way he liked it. Thought about the choice in front of him, safe and predictable, or uncertain and real. Okay, he said. Okay? Let's try. Let's build something real. Daniel stood, moved around the table to where Claire sat. But I'm not giving this back to you until I do it properly. Daniel, give me a week. 1 week to figure out how to do this right. Claire looked up at him, and he saw hope and fear, and something that might have been love beginning to take shape in her eyes. Okay, 1 week. Emma chose that moment to come downstairs, took one look at them standing close together in the kitchen, and rolled her eyes. Are you guys finally figuring out that you actually like each other? Because it's been pretty obvious for like a month. Daniel turned to his daughter. How long have you been listening? Long enough to know Claire wants to stay married, and you're being all dramatic about giving the ring back properly. Emma grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. For the record, I'm fine with it. She's actually pretty cool once you get past the workaholic CEO thing. Thanks, Emma, Claire said dryly. That's very touching. You're welcome. Also, Dad, whatever you're planning for the ring thing, don't make it super public. Claire hates being the center of attention. I do hate that, Claire confirmed. Emma grinned. See? I pay attention. She headed back upstairs, calling over her shoulder. And don't mess up the proposal, Dad. You've only got one shot to not be embarrassing. After she left, Daniel and Claire looked at each other and started laughing. The kind of slightly hysterical laughter that came from tension breaking and impossible situations becoming possible. Your daughter's terrifying, Claire said. She gets it from her mother. Sarah was the same way, completely direct. Zero tolerance for dancing around issues. It was the first time Daniel had talked about Sarah without the conversation feeling heavy or sad. Just a fact, a memory, part of who he was. Claire touched his arm gently. She sounds like she was amazing. She was. And she would have liked you, I think. Would have appreciated how you handle pressure, how you fight for what matters. You think so? I know so. Daniel covered Claire's hand with his. Now let me finish dinner before Emma comes back down and critiques my cooking too. The next week, Daniel planned with the kind of careful attention he usually reserved for supply chain optimization. He recruited Emma as a co-conspirator, which she took to with alarming enthusiasm. He consulted Harrison Webb about the legal implications of renewing vows that had started as fraud protection. He even called his sister Jennifer for advice, which resulted in a 40-minute conversation about how his life had become a romance novel and whether he'd completely lost his mind. I think maybe I have, Daniel admitted. But it feels right, Jen. She feels right. Then don't overthink it. Just tell her the truth. The truth. That sounded simple but felt impossibly complex. On the Saturday before Claire's birthday, Daniel suggested they take a drive. Emma manufactured an excuse about studying at a friend's house, an obvious lie that Claire pretended to believe, and Daniel and Claire headed out in the early afternoon. "Where are we going?" Claire asked as Daniel drove north out of the city. "You'll see. I don't like surprises." "I know. Emma told me, but trust me on this one." They drove for an hour, Claire checking her phone periodically but not actually doing any work, which Daniel counted as progress. Finally, he pulled off the highway onto a smaller road that wound through woods just beginning to show their winter bare branches. "Daniel, seriously, we're here." He parked at a small clearing overlooking a lake, different from the one behind Claire's house. Smaller, quieter, with hiking trails visible through the trees. "This is where Sarah and I got married," Daniel said quietly. 13 years ago. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. We had the reception at a restaurant in town, but the actual vows happened right there. He pointed to a spot near the water where a small wooden gazebo stood, weathered but sturdy. Claire was very still. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because when we got married at the courthouse, it was about solving a problem, about meeting a legal requirement, and that was fine. That was what we both needed." Daniel turned to face her. "But if we're going to do this for real, if we're going to choose each other, then I want to do it somewhere that means something. Somewhere that's about us, not about contracts or board meetings or trust clauses." He got out of the car, and after a moment, Claire followed. They walked down to the gazebo together, their footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. "Sarah would understand this," Daniel said, as they stood where he'd stood 13 years earlier. "She'd understand that loving someone new doesn't erase loving someone before. That moving forward isn't the same as forgetting." "Daniel, let me finish." He pulled the ring from his pocket, the same simple gold band, but he'd had it engraved since taking it from Claire's hand. "When we started this, I thought I was just helping someone in trouble, being noble or self-sacrificing or whatever Emma calls it. But somewhere between courthouse ceremonies and corporate fraud and making breakfast together, you stopped being my boss or my convenient wife and became someone I actually care about." Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You're difficult and driven, and you work too much," Daniel continued. "You can't cook to save your life, you're terrible at relaxing, and you check your email at 2 in the morning. But you're also brave and brilliant, and you fight for what matters. You make Emma laugh. You've turned a house into a home, and I'd like to keep building that with you, if you're willing." He held out the ring. "So Claire Whitmore, will you marry me? For real this time? No contracts, no lawyers, no board meetings, just us choosing to try." Claire took the ring with shaking hands, looked at the inscription he'd added, "Chosen, not required." "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, I'll marry you. For real this time." Daniel slid the ring onto her finger, and Claire pulled him into a kiss that was nothing like the brief chase touch in the courthouse. This was real and messy and full of emotion neither of them had expected to feel. When they finally pulled apart, Claire was crying and laughing at the same time. "Emma's going to be so smug about being right," she said. "She's already unbearable. This will make it worse." "I don't care." Claire kissed him again. "I really don't care." They spent another hour at the lake, talking about everything they'd carefully avoided discussing for 2 months. What they wanted from this marriage. How to balance Claire's demanding career with Daniel's need for routine. What it meant to be a family, the three of them, unconventional and imperfect, but trying. "I want to adopt Emma," Claire said suddenly. "Legally. If you'd allow it. Not to replace Sarah, but to make it official that she's part of this too." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "You should ask her. It's her choice." "I will. But I wanted you to know that when I say I'm choosing this, I'm choosing all of it. You and Emma and the whole complicated package. We're a lot to take on. Good thing I like complicated." When they got home, Emma was waiting on the couch with barely suppressed excitement. "So?" she demanded, before they'd even closed the front door. Claire held up her hand, showing the ring back in place. Emma jumped up with a whoop. "Finally! I thought you guys were going to drag this out forever." "It's been a week," Daniel pointed out. "A week of you being all weird and secretive and Claire pretending not to notice." Emma looked at them both. "So what happens now? Do we have another wedding? Do I have to wear a fancy dress again? Actually, Claire said, sitting beside Emma on the couch, I wanted to ask you something about making this official in another way. She explained about the adoption, about wanting to formalize Emma's place in their family. Emma listened with her characteristic directness, processing the implications. So you'd be like my actual stepmom, legally? If you wanted that, you don't have to decide now. You can think about... Okay. Claire blinked. Okay? Yeah. I mean, you're already here. You already act like you care about what happens to me. Might as well make it official. Emma paused. But I'm not calling you Mom. That's still weird. Claire is perfect, Claire said, her voice thick with emotion. Cool. Can we order pizza to celebrate? Dad was going to make fish, and I hate fish. Daniel laughed. Pizza it is. They ordered too much food and ate it in the living room instead of the formal dining room, talking about plans for a small ceremony, just the three of them, and maybe Jennifer and Harrison as witnesses. Nothing elaborate or public, just a quiet commitment made official. Later, after Emma had gone to bed and Daniel and Claire were cleaning up, she caught his hand. I never thought I'd have this, she said quietly. A family. People who chose to be here instead of being obligated by blood or business. You deserve it. We all do. Claire leaned against him. Thank you for taking a chance on the impossible. You made it possible. You and Emma both. They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, and for the first time since moving into this house, Daniel felt like he truly belonged here. Not as a guest or a convenient solution to a problem, but as someone who'd chosen to stay and build something real. The second wedding happened on a cold Saturday in December, back at the lake where Daniel had proposed. Just Daniel, Claire, Emma, Jennifer, and Harrison, with Judge Hernandez officiating again, but this time with genuine smiles instead of legal necessity. Emma served as both witness and unofficial photographer, capturing moments on her phone with surprising artistic skill. Jennifer cried through the entire ceremony, which she blamed on allergies despite the freezing temperature. Harrison kept checking his phone until Claire threatened to throw it in the lake. The vows were simple and honest. Claire promised to try to leave work at the office at least 3 nights a week. Daniel promised to be patient when she inevitably failed. They both promised Emma that her needs would always come first, that they'd figure out this unconventional family thing together, that love didn't have to look traditional to be real. When Judge Hernandez pronounced them married, again, Daniel kissed his wife with the certainty that this time it meant exactly what it was supposed to mean. Afterward, they had lunch at the same restaurant where Daniel and Sarah had held their reception 13 years earlier. Emma declared the whole thing actually pretty cool for a second wedding and spent most of the meal texting her friends about how weird her life had become. Claire's phone rang twice, but she ignored both calls, which Daniel recognized as a minor miracle. The company will survive without me for one afternoon, she said. That's growth, Jennifer observed. 2 months ago, you would have answered on the first ring. 2 months ago, I was fighting for survival. Now I'm just fighting to maintain work-life balance. How's that going? Terribly, but I'm trying. They drove home as the winter sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Emma fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotion and excitement of the day. Claire's hand found Daniel's across the center console. No regrets? She asked quietly. Not even one. You? I regret not doing this sooner, but everything else? No, this is exactly right. At the house, Daniel carried a sleeping Emma inside while Claire dealt with the inevitable backlog of messages from her executive team. But an hour later, she closed her laptop, turned off her phone, and joined Daniel on the deck overlooking the lake. I talked to the board yesterday, she said, wrapping a blanket around both of them against the cold. About succession planning. Already? We just got remarried. Not for me. For Emma. I'm adding her to the trust as a potential successor. Not immediately, obviously. But when she's older, if she wants it, she'll have the option to be part of this company's future. Daniel looked at Claire in surprise. That's a big decision? She's a big part of my life now. Of our life. And I want her to know she has options, that she can choose her own path, whatever that looks like. She'll probably want to be a marine biologist or an artist or something completely unrelated to logistics. Good. Then she'll bring fresh perspective when she joins the board and drives everyone crazy with unconventional ideas. Claire smiled. I'm planning ahead. You're always planning ahead. It's a compulsion. But this time I'm planning for something I actually want instead of something I'm required to do. That's new. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the lake darken as night fell. Inside, lights glowed warmly through the windows. Emma's bedroom light was on. She'd clearly woken up and was probably doing homework or texting friends or whatever 13-year-olds did on Saturday nights. I keep thinking about that night at the party, Daniel said, when you asked me to marry you. If someone had told me then that 2 months later I'd be sitting here actually happy about the decision, I would have thought they were insane. We were both insane. We still might be. Probably. But it's working. It is. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you for seeing past the impossible to what could be possible. Thank you for trusting me with something as important as your company and your life. They're not separate anymore. You know that, right? You saved the company by saving me, by showing up and being exactly who you are, steady and smart and decent. Daniel kissed the top of her head. We saved each other. That's how partnerships work. Later, after Claire had finally gone to bed and Daniel was checking locks and turning off lights, he found Emma in the kitchen making hot chocolate. Can't sleep? He asked. Just thinking. Emma poured hot water over chocolate powder with careful precision. Today was nice. Weird, but nice. Weird is kind of our specialty now. Yeah, Emma smiled. Dad, I know you were scared. When Claire first asked you to do this, I know you didn't want to mess up or put me in danger or change everything we'd built. I'm still scared sometimes. But you did it anyway. Because it was the right thing, because someone needed help. Emma looked at him directly. That's what you taught me. That sometimes being scared doesn't matter as much as being brave, and that helping people, even when it's hard, is what makes us good. Daniel felt emotion tighten his throat. When did you get so wise? I've been paying attention. Emma hugged him quickly, then grabbed her hot chocolate. Night, Dad. Thanks for not being boring. You're welcome. Alone in the quiet kitchen, Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that October night when a desperate CEO had asked the impossible through corporate fraud and boardroom battles, through fake marriage becoming real, through fear transforming into choice. He thought about Sarah, about the life they'd built and the lessons she'd taught him about love and loss and moving forward. He thought about Claire, about the woman behind the CEO facade who trusted him with her vulnerability. He thought about Emma, growing up watching her father choose courage over comfort, connection over safety. And he thought about the future, uncertain and complicated and full of potential. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire, who was supposedly sleeping. Thank you for everything, for choosing us. Daniel typed back, best decision I ever made. Get some sleep. You too. He turned off the kitchen lights and climbed the stairs to bed. Outside his window, the December moon reflected off the lake's surface. Inside the house, his family slept. His daughter in her chosen room, his wife in the master suite they'd recently started sharing, their lives intertwined in ways none of them had planned, but all of them had chosen. 2 months ago, Daniel had been invisible, careful, content to stay small and safe. Now he was married to a billionaire CEO, living in a lakeside mansion and helping raise both his daughter and a logistics empire. It was impossible. It was insane. It was perfect. And as Daniel drifted off to sleep, he smiled at the irony of it all. He'd agreed to a fake marriage to help a stranger, and somehow ended up with the most real thing he'd experienced since Sarah died. Sometimes the right choice looked nothing like the safe choice. Sometimes the impossible became possible when you were brave enough to try. And sometimes a birthday joke that wasn't a joke became the beginning of something extraordinary. Daniel Reed had learned to be invisible, but Claire Whitmore had seen him anyway, and together they'd built something worth being visible for.